No, that's better. I hope everybody can hear me okay and that there wasn't that echo that I heard. Welcome everybody. I'm delighted to see so many join you to join us for the second of DRNI's webinar series on brain health and dementia. My name is Vanessa Moore. I'm the Scientific Project Manager for DRNI. We're delighted to have so many of you join us again for the Brain Health and Dementia series. So today's webinar is the second of the 5 webinars focusing specifically on brain health and dementia. And today we're going to learn all about diet and nutrition in the context of brain health and dementia. Today's speaker is Dr. Claire McEvoy from Queen's University Belfast. Hi, Claire. I'm sorry for the hassle of letting you in. Technology is not being my friend again today. Claire was meant to be joined by Dr. Rebecca Townsend, who unfortunately couldn't make it at the last minute, but Claire has more than enough expertise to make up for it. Today's topic on diet and nutrition is a bit of a lucky coincidence, as the HRB have recently opened 2 calls under JPND, the EU Joint Programme for Neurodegenerative Disease Research, related to neurodegeneration, and the 2 calls are from the Transnational Working Group, Use of Digital Technologies in Neurodegenerative Disease Research and Clinical Practice, and then a bit more relevant, the second one, ERA for Health, Joint Transnational Call on Modulation of Brain Aging through Nutrition and Healthy Lifestyle, NutriBrain. Ireland has a very strong research community in areas such as nutrition and physical exercise, and the HRB have asked us to relay that if there are any applicants thinking of applying to either of the 2 calls and are looking for partners with this specific expertise as part of a consortium, please get in touch with the HRB and they can advise the relevant partners. The information about the 2 calls and contact details are all on the HRB's website. So before I give Claire's official introduction, I just want to say that if you have any questions at any stage, please just put them in the Q&A button, Q&A box, or in the chat. It's all at the bottom of your screen, or it should be. We will have time at the end for Q&A, but feel free to kind of pose questions as they come up and send them just as you get along. We'll get to them as we move forward. So now to the official introduction. We're very pleased to welcome Dr. Claire McEvoy here today. Thanks so much, Claire, for joining us. Dr. McEvoy is a dietitian and epidemiologist at the Centre for Public Health School of Medicine, Queen's University Belfast, where she investigates the role of nutrition in healthy aging. She has a special interest in understanding how dietary patterns influence neurodegeneration during aging and works to inform evidence-based dietary recommendations for dementia prevention. Dr. McEvoy has received several prestigious awards to support her research, including the Beeson Cardy Career Development Fellowship from the American Federation of Aging Research, and is the project coordinator for Horizon Europe Healthy Life, Healthy. Sorry, I think I disappeared again. I hope you can hear me again now. Sorry, am I back? Can you hear me, Claire? I hope everybody can hear
Just
me.
a little bit of buff. Vanessa, there's a little bit of buffering on the line, and you're cutting out a little bit. So just for me, I'm sure.
Okay, sorry about that. Well, I'm very, very, very nearly finished. So I'll just finish. So Claire is also Senior Atlantic Fellow of GBHI, the Global Brain Health Institute, University of California at San Francisco, and Trinity College Dublin. I'll take my video off, that might help. And the floor is yours, Claire. Go ahead. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Vanessa, and hello, everyone. I'm just going to try and share my slides on screen now. Screen 2. Vanessa, can you tell me if you're seeing my slides on screen?
Yeah, they flashed up and then then they disappeared, and now I can just see Claire McEvoy has. Oh, there they are now. I can see them anyway.
Can you see
If
my full
anybody
slide
has,
set?
yeah, I can see them there now. If people can't see, just pop something in the chat.
Okay. Okay, we can see it. That's great. So hello everyone, good morning, and thank you very much to Vanessa for introducing me and for the Dementia Research Network in Ireland for the invitation to come along and speak at the webinar today on diet and brain health, which is my research area up at Queen's University in Belfast. And as Vanessa said, yes, I'm a dietitian, but I'm also a researcher. So I'm going to talk about approaches to brain health and talk about the studies that we have performed that are finished and some that are currently active. It's a big topic area, so if there's something that I don't cover today and we don't get a chance to discuss, I've put my email address on the screen, and feel free to contact me at any time. I'd love to hear from you. So just to show you our today's outline of today's webinar, I'm going to discuss quite in terms of critical appraisal of some of the nutritional approaches for brain health that are commonly used. And these include vitamins, supplements, a multi-nutrient supplement, and also some brain healthy dietary patterns. And then I'm going to also talk a little bit about preventing undernutrition, why that's really important, we feel, to prevent cognitive decline and to optimize brain health at any stage in life. So why are we studying this area? Well, most of you will know that dementia is a huge public health challenge across the island of Ireland. So dementia is an umbrella term. It involves a range of conditions that cause irreversible damage to the brain, and it affects memory and thinking functions, as well as the ability to carry out everyday tasks. So it is one of the leading causes of disability in older age, and it affects across the island of Ireland. There are around 86,000 people living with dementia. So these figures are set to double in the next 20 years, largely because we're aging, we're getting older, our population's aging and living longer. And there is an expected increase in the socio-economic costs associated with dementia care, and that is expected to rise to over €200 billion per year as well. The main causes of Alzheimer's in our population is Alzheimer's disease, which is caused by the buildup of abnormal proteins in the brain, like amyloid protein and tau proteins in the brain, and then also vascular dementia, which is caused by a disrupted blood flow to the brain. So those are the main types of dementia in our population. And importantly, dementia, it is irreversible. There's no cure. So we really need to think about ways in which we can slow down the progression of the disease, and slow down cognitive decline during aging, and also even think about preventing dementia at a population level. So for our brain cells to keep healthy, there are broad conditions, environmental conditions that the brain needs, and I've just put those on screen today. So these are an adequate delivery of oxygen and nutrients, an effective waste removal system, so rapid and effective removal of waste products and toxins, so to avoid those toxins build up in the brain, a low level of inflammation, and also it needs stimulation to build new connections with other neurons. And this is, I think, diet can really impact on all of these environmental conditions to keep our brain fit and healthy. So in terms of the approaches that have been studied so far, they're broadly categorized as nutrients. So that's like vitamins E and C and calcium, for example. And then foods, that could be fish, and food groups could be fruit and vegetables. And then overall dietary patterns. So this is the combination of foods and nutrients as we consume them in our daily lives. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the nutrient approach and then leading into the dietary patterns. And actually, one of the most common questions I get asked is whether nutrient supplements protect against cognitive decline. There's so many supplements on the market. They are heavily marketed, and they're marketed for dementia, they're marketed for memory function, and also they're not very well regulated. So it's important that we examine the scientific evidence before choosing to take these products. And if you're interested in this area, the NIH, which is the National Institute for Health in America, they have a very helpful website called the Dietary Supplements and Cognitive Function, Dementia and Alzheimer's Disease. Or over-the-counter supplements that are used for dementia. So I'm going to just summarize some of the evidence one by one, starting with ginkgo biloba, which many of you will know as a herbal supplement. It's widely used in Ireland, in Europe, and in America for preventing and treating dementia. And actually, we do have the findings from a very large placebo-controlled, randomized controlled trial. So this is called the GEM study, or the Ginkgo Evaluation of Memory study. It enrolled over 3,000 older adults who were randomized either to take a ginkgo supplement or a placebo supplement, and they followed them up over a long period of time. And what they found was that the older adults who took the ginkgo supplement, they found it really ineffective in lowering the overall incidence of dementia and Alzheimer's disease in the population. And it didn't really have any impact on cognitive decline either. It also didn't have any effect on lowering blood pressure or hypertension, which some people take this product for. So no evidence to support ginkgo biloba. In terms of omega-3 fatty acids, well, these are really important. They're a type of fatty acid that's found primarily in oily fish, like mackerel and herrings and salmon. And they're found in high concentrations in our brain cell membranes. So during the early life and when we're children, omega-3 are really important to help our brains grow and develop, and they're thought to be quite important for memory function and to help our brain cells communicate better together and help with memory and learning. So there have been some studies which have been reviewed by the Cochrane Library, and there is no convincing evidence for the efficacy of omega-3 supplements in the treatment of mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease. So that was the conclusion of some of the evidence base, but some of these trials are quite small and short in duration. Also, they might be helpful at an earlier stage of the disease process, but we don't know yet. But there's no evidence to support taking omega-3 supplements, but we do recommend fish intake. So vitamin E then is a potent antioxidant vitamin, and it helps to mop up all those toxins in the brain and keep our brain healthy. And vitamin E has been examined in a couple of trials, and again, this has been under review by the Cochrane Library. So there's no evidence from these two trials that vitamin E has any benefit for preventing progression to dementia in mild cognitive impairment. That has shown that it may slow functional decline in Alzheimer's disease, which of course is important because that's one element that helps keep people independent as they get older. So again, only a small number of trials, and the evidence base is not that convincing for cognition. Curcumin is it's a spice it's an active ingredient in turmeric, which is an Asian spice. And there's been some work in animal studies that have shown that curcumin can actually reduce inflammation in the brain and also help to clear amyloid, that toxic protein that is a hallmark pathology for Alzheimer's disease. But it has been very rarely studied in humans. In fact, there really is only one trial published in a small number, 96 older adults, which found no benefit taking curcumin on cognition over 12 months. And then finally, I just want to mention B vitamins. So B vitamins it's very important. We know that B vitamin deficiency can affect cognition. It can cause cognitive impairment in thinking and memory functions. And it's also important for our cardiovascular functioning. And there have been a few trials that have been published, but they're mostly short-term trials testing out vitamin B supplementation. Again, these have been reviewed and brought together, and what the general conclusion is that these short-term trials show no evidence that they help with cognitive functioning in adults with or without dementia. There is some evidence that longer-term supplementation with B vitamins may slow cognitive decline in those who receive early intervention, so even before cognitive impairment becomes apparent. So that's sort of the single nutrients that are most commonly marketed towards brain health and dementia prevention. And I want to also mention a multi-nutrient supplement, which some of you may have heard about. It's called Suvinade, and it's produced by a company called Nutricia, and they produce medical food supplements. So this is a patented combination of nutrients called Fortisyn Connect. So it brings together those omega-3 fatty acids, B vitamins, antioxidants, plus some additional compounds like uridine and choline that are thought to be important for cofactors for the synapses formation. So it has been shown preclinically, this combination of these nutrients, it's been shown preclinically, in other words, in animal studies, to increase the cognitive function. And there has been some testing of this in humans as well. So this is the Lipidi diet study. It was a randomized controlled trial carried out where they recruited over 300 people with early Alzheimer's disease and randomized them to take an active intervention, which was the Suvinade drink once a day, or a control group, which was taking a placebo control drink once a day. And the original trial was followed up. They were followed up for 24 months, so 2 years. And then a small subgroup of this sample was followed up for an additional 12 months up to month 36. So I'm just going to show you some of the main findings that are interesting from this trial. So this is the first result showing global cognition. So this is where they took all the cognitive tests and they put them into a composite score, and they looked at the change in this cognitive score in the intervention group, which is in the purple here. So that was the group taking the Suvinade, and then they looked at the control group and tracked their performance on this global score over time up to month 36. And you can see by month 24 there seems to be separation in the two groups, and by month 36 there seems to be a clinical benefit in taking the Suvinade on global cognitive functioning compared to the control group. And that was also the case at month 36 for when they just looked at the memory scores, so how well people were performing on memory tests. There seemed to be a less decline, let's say, in memory score in participants taking the Suvinade compared to those in the control group. And interestingly, they also were able to do some MRI scanning of the brain, and they were interested in hippocampal volume. Now, the hippocampus is really important for short-term memory formation, and it's really vulnerable to Alzheimer's disease. So what this study has shown that the people who were taking Suvenade seem to have less decline or less shrinkage in their hippocampal volume compared to the control group. So overall, in people with early stage Alzheimer's disease, daily consumption of Suvenade appeared to slow down cognitive decline and also brain shrinkage in a key region of the brain compared to the control group. So I just want to summarize some of the take-home messages with regards to vitamins. It seems like the single nutrient supplements do not appear to have any benefit for cognitive decline. From longer-term vitamin B supplementation. And a multi-nutrient Suvenade drink that you have to purchase, taken over the long term, at least 2 years, may help to slow cognitive decline and disease progression in people with early stage Alzheimer's disease. But these findings were really in small samples, and they need to be replicated in larger studies, I feel, before we have confidence in recommending this multi-nutrient Suvenade drink for this group of people. Okay, so different foods, different nutrients can affect inflammation, oxidative stress, and blood flow to the brain, as well as neuronal brain cell function. But of course, we don't just eat one nutrient or one food. So perhaps it is the balance of our diet that's most important. So that is the topic of the next section of the webinar. And there is some reason to be optimistic about dementia risk reduction in our population. So we have learned a lot about dementia risk factors over the last 20 years, that it's not just our age and genetics that determine the onset of dementia in later life, but the Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention, Intervention and Care have reviewed all of the evidence base, and they have released several reports on risk factors for dementia. And in the 2017 report, only one dietary pattern was mentioned as being potentially neuroprotective, and that's the Mediterranean dietary pattern. Probably for people who have intact cognition, and it'll probably provide most benefit when combined with other healthy lifestyle behaviors like exercise and cognitive and social stimulation. And some of the mechanisms of how Mediterranean diet might help our brain health is through really reducing brain damage by improving vascular functioning in the brain, reducing oxidative stress, and reducing neuroinflammation. And there have been also some modeling studies showing that even if we can, reduce the disease progression, if we can delay the onset of dementia in our population by 2 or 5 years, we could actually have a significant public health impact by reducing the prevalence of future dementia cases by up to 33% in our population. So having a healthy diet is part of that approach. So the Mediterranean diet, as I said, it's the most commonly studied model by us and others in terms of brain health. There are many of the Mediterranean basin, but this is a good model that we use in research. And generally, the components are that it's high and rich in fruit and vegetables, in legumes, in whole grains. The main fat source is olive oil, and it's actually not a low-fat diet. It's more considered to be a moderate fat diet. There's also natural nuts taken moderately, fish intake, particularly oily fish, and also permits a moderate intake of alcohol, generally of wine with meals, and that The reason it has been studied in terms of brain health is because it has proven cardiovascular benefits. And so anything that's good for our brain is good for our heart is generally good for our brain as well. And this type of dietary pattern is high in those antioxidant vitamins, the B vitamins, healthy unsaturated fats, including omega-3, which is the DHA there. Also, it has plant bioactives called polyphenols that are also potent antioxidants and can cross the blood-brain barrier. And the best thing about this diet as well is that it's low in animal fats, so it's low in saturated fat and it's low in sugar, and those things are thought to be harmful for brain health. So eating this combination of foods and nutrients is thought to provide a protection against dementia. So let's look at some of the evidence, and this was a study that we carried out a few years back, where we looked at adherence to a Mediterranean diet early on in life and cognitive function at midlife. So these were adults who were recruited when they were about 25 years old, and about 3,000 adults. And then they were followed for 30 years, and they had repeated measures of their diet, and they had repeated measures of their cognitive functioning. So we looked at their adherence to a Greek Mediterranean diet, and what we found was that those who had moderate or a high adherence to the Mediterranean diet had less decline in their cognitive functioning at midlife compared to those who had a low adherence to a Mediterranean diet. And that was even when we adjusted these models for socioeconomic factors and also cardiovascular risk factors. We also have recently published a study investigating risk of dementia and incident dementia in a UK population. So this was using a large sample of adults enrolled in the UK Biobank study. So we investigated, our sample size was over 60,000 UK adults. They had the measures of diet, so we were able to look at their adherence to a Mediterranean diet and then follow them up over 9 years to see who developed dementia and who didn't develop dementia. And what we found was that greater adherence to a Mediterranean diet was associated with around 23% lower dementia risk. And the same risk reduction was also apparent with participants who had an increased genetic risk associated with dementia in later life. So the Mediterranean diet might be beneficial for people with and without genetic risk for dementia. There are also some studies looking in terms of brain scans to see if the Mediterranean diet can affect directly our brain health. And this is the Lothian birth cohort in Scotland. So this was in older adults who had a repeated MRI scan. And what they found here in this study was that those who had greater adherence to the Mediterranean diet had significantly less total brain atrophy or shrinkage over a 3-year period. So and that was after controlling for all of those, socio-demographic factors like education and even IQ as well, suggesting that a healthy diet like the Mediterranean diet may be beneficial for preserving brain volume. And lastly, I just want to point out some prospective population studies as well that have reported beneficial associations between Mediterranean diet adherence and amyloid burden. So the amyloid, remember, is that toxic protein that is a hallmark with up to 60% less amyloid accumulation in older adults. And it was also found to be associated with less amyloid accumulation in younger adults from age 30 to 60 years old. And overall, it was estimated to provide up to 3.5 years protection against the onset of Alzheimer's disease. So it's possible that diet intervention can influence disease pathology, particularly for Alzheimer's. There have been very few intervention studies where we actually ask people to eat a Mediterranean diet and then we follow them up to see what effects that has on their cognition. This is one study that was published in Spain. It was part of a larger multi-center study, and the primary endpoint for the study was actually cardiovascular disease, but they did a sub-study investigating cognitive functioning. So they randomized the participants into, these were older adults who had increased cardiovascular disease risk factors, but they didn't have any signs of cognitive impairment. So they were randomized into a group that was asked to consume a Mediterranean diet plus olive oil, or a Mediterranean diet plus nuts, or to a control group, which was a low-fat diet. And what this showed over 4 years was that both of the Mediterranean diets showed less decline in global cognitive functioning and in memory in response to the diet intervention when compared to the control group. So that gives us some promising data that Mediterranean diet, adopting a Mediterranean diet, can actually have beneficial effects on cognition during aging. But we need to have more data in this area as well. So the final section, I just wanted to talk a little bit about undernutrition and dementia risk in older adults. And for us, this is a relatively new research area. I feel it's very understudied, and it's something that we need to do more research in. So, and the reason is that undernutrition caused by reduced food intake or nutritional deficiencies can lead to unintentional weight loss during aging. And it's actually quite common in older adults living in the community. So our conservative estimates up north are around 1 in 10 older adults in the community are undernourished. And actually, the prevalence is much greater in people who have cognitive impairment. And that's because in early preclinical changes associated with dementia, so these are changes in the brain that happen well before that can mean there can be changes in hormones like leptin signaling that helps control our appetite and energy intake and hunger. And also there can be changes in things like taste and smell that also impact on our food choice during aging. So we know that people who are undernourished with cognitive impairment experience faster functional and cognitive decline and loss of independence and increased disability in older age compared to those who are adequately nourished. And actually there is some population-based data at the moment that is related weight loss during aging to increase dementia risk. So weight loss is shown to increase, is associated with increased dementia risk by around up to 40%. And importantly and consistently in studies, it's shown to precede the diagnosis of a cognitive impairment by at least a decade. So that begs the question, and it also gives us an opportunity to intervene with strategies to combat undernutrition and potentially prevent or delay the onset of cognitive impairment. And that's the focus of a trial that we have ongoing at the moment. This is part of a European project that I coordinate in Belfast. We have a number of European partners, but the trial itself is being conducted in Belfast. So we've actually finished recruiting our sample, and we are just following up our data collection. So we hope to have the results available in early 2024. We have published our study protocol, as you can see here. If you're interested, you can go into the BMJ Open and search for the ProMedX trial, and that's open access, so anyone can download it. So this trial, as I say, it's still ongoing, but we have actually recruited our target sample. So these are people who live in the community and they're 60 years and older, and they have subjective memory decline. They also have a high nutritional risk, so they're at risk of undernutrition, and we look at their mini nutritional assessment score to detect undernutrition. So it's a validated and sensitive measure of nutritional status in older adults. So we have recruited our sample of 105, and they are randomized into one of three groups. So the first group is the ProMed X group. So that's a protein-enriched Mediterranean diet and home-based exercise intervention. Group 2 follows just the ProMed diet alone. So that's the protein-enriched Mediterranean diet. And group 3 received just standard healthy eating diet sheet at the baseline. And then we conduct study measures at baseline at 3 months and 6 months, and that involves very detailed measures of nutritional intake and nutritional status, and also in cognitive performance on different tests to assess domains of overall cognition and memory and executive functioning and processing speed. So just a little bit about the interventions that we ask our participants to follow. So we spent quite a bit of time as a research group developing the interventions, and actually they were co-produced with our PPI group, who were people who had lived experience of memory decline or being undernourished. So they helped us immensely develop all of the resources to support behaviour change in our intervention groups. And the intervention itself consists of personalised diet and exercise advice. So all of our participants who are allocated to the diet with or without exercise intervention much tailored personal advice to try and improve their diet quality and be more active as well in terms of the exercise aspect of the intervention. We have developed a home-based exercise program, and this was based on the XWell commercial exercise program in the south of Ireland. And this has been shown to have really high engagement with older adults, and it's also very suitable for people with chronic disease conditions as well. It's been shown to improve cardiovascular fitness. We also produced written education for both the home exercise program, and there are videos, and we provide people with dumbbells and a pedometer as well to monitor their progress. In terms of the diet, we have a suite of meal plans and recipes that people that are low cost, they're easy to prepare, so you don't need any special equipment. It also provides practical advice on small appetites and meal planning and improving the nutrition with the foods that you enjoy to eat. We deliver key foods to our intervention participants over the first 3 months of the trial, and they're selected from a list of foods that reflect the ProMed dietary targets. And also then our participants are provided with weekly telephone support. And we have also incorporated behaviour change techniques that we know are successful in helping people change their diet and exercise behaviours into our intervention. So these are things like goal setting and also self-monitoring. So that's what the interventions looked like. In terms of the dietary targets, what we are aiming for are we have daily targets and we have weekly targets. And of course, we're not expecting our study participants to do all of these things, but rather set small goals that they build upon over time to improve, to shift towards this brain healthy, high protein diet. So the components are, you can maybe score your own diet. We score it out of 14 points, but really we're looking at intake of olive oil, fruit, vegetables, whole grain foods, dairy foods, and moderate alcohol if it's enjoyed and consumed by the participant. And then weekly, we're aiming for preferential consumption of chicken and oily fish over red meat. And we're also aiming for 3 handfuls of natural nuts per week. So those are our dietary targets. And then I'm just going to, we have recruited our samples. So this is who we've recruited. So some of the baseline characteristics are that they are in their 60s. Our oldest participant is 87. They're mainly female, mainly retired, fully retired. About a third of our sample live alone. Their MNA score is 22.5, which means that they are in the at risk of undernutrition category, but so they're not clinically malnourished, but they're at risk of undernutrition. BMI, most of the participants have a BMI in the normal BMI range. And then the ProMed diet score, as I said, is our diet quality score. It's scored at 14. And our participants on average are scoring around 6.7, which is low to moderate adherence to the ProMed diet components. So I have some 3-month data to show. As I said, we're still collecting the data for 6-month study visits. So we'll have that data next year to look at changes in diet quality and in nutritional status and in cognition of the 3-month data. We looked at the change in the ProMed score at 3 months. So this is a bar chart showing the change from the baseline in the 3 groups in their ProMed score. So we have the ProMed X group in the blue bar, the ProMed group, which is just the diet alone, in the orange bar, and then the control group in the grey bar. And what you can see is that both of the intervention groups have significantly increased their diet quality score in response to the intervention over the 3-month period. And the main increase was actually greater than the target we had set for participants, which was a 2-point or more increase in diet quality score. We also looked at change in the malnutrition risk score, which is the MNA score. So this is a score of nutritional status. We observed a significant shift towards better nutritional status in both of our ProMed and ProMed X intervention groups compared to the control group. And it, again, for both of the interventions, was greater than the 2-point target that we had set for trial participants. So all of that looks promising, but we're going to have to wait for the 6-month data collection to be completed. So just in the last few minutes before we end the webinar, I just wanted to summarize some of the key points discussed today. So dementia, I'm sure you all agree, represents one of the biggest social healthcare challenges facing the island of Ireland today. And I hope I've convinced you that nutrition can play a role in keeping brains healthy during aging. So diet can have an impact on vascular health of the brain. It can reduce oxidative stress, and it also can reduce inflammation in the brain. We do feel that nutrients that are eaten in combination from foods are likely to be more beneficial for brain health than taking supplements. And the scientific evidence supports the Mediterranean diet as a good model for being neuroprotective, and especially for people who have intact cognition. Avoiding undernutrition and unintentional weight loss is really critical for older adults with or without dementia, and that's where our ProMed diet might provide some use for that. And we're happy to maybe share the results through the network next year when we have those available. So I'd just like to end by thanking all of my collaborators, and especially the ProMed X team, you can see listed there, who do all of the field work for the trial that we're conducting at the moment. And thank you.
much for that, Claire. I hope everybody can hear me, and I hope my internet connection won't be playing up too much. Can you hear me, Claire?
Yes, we can.
Great, great. Thanks so much for that. That was extremely interesting. Especially to see the data, the 3 month data fresh off the presses, so to say. Very interesting. I have a load of questions that are falling in, so I will we'll see how many we can get through. But one of the first ones was, is there any evidence about the impact of a lifelong vegetarian diet on risk factors for dementia?
Yes, actually, there's some data from communities that do follow lifelong vegetarian habits, like Seventh-day Adventists, for example. And there are populations that are followed up over time to see what impact the diet has on important health outcomes, and does seem to be showing benefit for cognition. But the problem is with those sorts of populations is that they also don't smoke, they don't consume much alcohol, they're normally active, and they have very healthy lifestyle habits. So a bit unique, and it's hard to sort of determine or disentangle all of those different lifestyle habits out. So it's hard to know if it's just the diet or perhaps it is more of a lifestyle approach there.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But I'm vegetarian, so I was getting excited there. But then all the other stuff, I thought, I do them as well. So, there was another questions in terms of Suvinade. Did they look at participants' overall diet and balance of it in the study?
Not to my knowledge, but there is a couple of studies that are ongoing at the moment. As I said, the data, in the Suvinade study was, quite promising, but the sample sizes were low. So especially for the 36-month endpoint for the study. However, there are a couple of studies that are going on in Europe at the moment, where they're combining Suvinade with a sort of brain healthy dietary pattern. So those are ongoing at the moment, and it'll probably be next year before we get some findings from that. So that'll be very interesting to see if having a sort of healthy diet with the Suvinade actually has an additive effect on cognition and on our brain health.
Absolutely. There was a second Suvinade question that I'll just throw in. Is Suvinade available over the counter? And if so, is there an estimate cost?
Yes, so it is. I mean, Suvinade is in the north. We have it available through that's recommended through memory clinics, but people have to purchase it themselves, and I presume that would be the case in the south of Ireland as well. So it's around it's 125 ml drink once a day, and it's around, I think, about €3 a drink. So it is fairly, can be fairly expensive, considering that you do have to, if you're going to start taking it, it needs to be a long-term commitment to taking it on a daily basis. So it could be expensive enough. But yes, you can buy it direct from the company, I think, as well, which is Nutrition.
Great. And there was another questions about the Lippi diet clinical trials. It says outcomes of the Lippi diet clinical trials are great. Is it currently implemented in the prescriptions of dementia clients?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question, Vanessa.
Outcomes of Lippi diet clinical trial are great. Is it currently implemented in, well, RX, that means prescription, doesn't it? Of dementia clients. Might be betraying my non-medical background here.
So if I understand correctly, you're asking if Suvinade is
the Lippi diet clinical trial?
The Lippi diet?
Lippi diet, sorry, yeah.
Yes. Is it a clinical trial?
Is it currently, so the person has written, is it currently implemented in RX of dementia clients? I thought RX meant that is it being like prescribed? I thought RX meant prescriptions. I might be wrong.
No, it's a clinical trial, and
Okay.
it was testing out the Suvenade in relation to a placebo drink. So I think the trial data is promising for people, but for very specific population. So these are people who have early stage Alzheimer's disease. There's no evidence that it has any benefit for people who have intact cognition or people who have later stages of Alzheimer's disease. So we have to think about the type of population that was recruited for this particular trial. So I think it's showing promising effects, but we need to gather more data in different population groups and also in larger samples as well to be convinced.
Thanks so much. And then just a few kind of specific questions around diet. So how do you increase olive oil usage for the Mediterranean diet? We only cook with olive oil. Is that bad? And how much red meat is too much in the week?
Okay, well, cooking with olive oil is expensive, I would say. So olive oil is great. I mean, extra virgin olive oil does contain all of those bioactives, as well as the healthy unsaturated fats that are thought to be good for just our heart health and our brain health as well. But it is quite expensive. What our study participants tend to do, I've been learning a lot about how they incorporate olive oil into their everyday diets. So they actually just take it down the hatch sometimes, or they add it to things like smoothies. They add it to some people have not, instead of adding butter to potatoes, they would put, when the potatoes are cooked, they add it over the potatoes or over pasta. They use it in salad dressing. So those are the types of things that they use it. It's probably more beneficial to use it in the raw form. Cooking sort of with olive oil, I would just go for a rapeseed oil or a lower class of olive oil if you want to cook with it, because it sort of destroys some of the bioactives in the extra virgin olive oil, and it's very expensive to cook with.
Okay, thanks a million. And so the follow-up question to that also was how much red meat is too much in the week, and also what type of nuts are part of the Mediterranean diet?
So red meat, in terms of the Mediterranean dietary model that we advocate in our studies, we suggest that people limit their red meat intake to no more than 2 portions per week and try to reduce processed meats like ham and bacon and sausages and burgers, but instead go for cuts of meat like roast beef and steak and that sort of thing. So no more than 2 portions a week, with preferential consumption of chicken and oily fish to get the sort of protein sources throughout the week. And in terms of nuts, so the most studied nuts in the Mediterranean diet for health benefits, but all in the natural form. So not salted or fried or added, with any sort of flavoring added to them. So a handful of those, I think it's 3 times a week we recommend, and you sort of mix and match in those.
There's another question here also. Is the ProMed study showing that protein alone is very important, as it seemed to have a greater effect than the combination with exercise?
Well, that's interesting observation, but actually there's no difference between the 2 intervention groups at this point in time. It'll be interesting to see if there's any difference at the 6-month level between the groups in terms of diet quality. We are looking at an overall score, which incorporates those high protein components. But it's very much up to the individual person what components they're increasing in their diet to increase their overall score. So what we intend to do at the end of the study is have a deeper dive into the dietary data to see what kind of things people are increasing in their diet, and whether they are meeting the target protein levels as well that we would like them to meet, which is about 1.2 grams per kilogram per day of dietary protein.
Okay, that's great. I have two more questions. I think we can squeeze them in. We have 4 minutes to go. What do you recommend as a guide for following the Mediterranean diet? A publication of recipes? Is there anything in particular you tell people? Any particular book to go for or anything like that?
Yeah, so we have developed a range of resources. So if anyone's interested, I mean, we have culturally adapted the Mediterranean diet model for food preferences in our country. So I think that's probably better than having sort of foods like, for instance, in the original Mediterranean diet score, they are scoring positively for people who eat sofrito, which is sort of like a tomato-based sauce. But we don't eat that very often as a country. So we had to adapt that for our food preferences for Northern Ireland, which is relevant for South of Ireland as well. So we have got a range of recipes and seasonal recipes, and we intend to try and produce a resource that will help people to make some small changes to their diet to switch towards the Mediterranean diet. And again, it's even just getting a moderate, you don't have to have a full 100% compliance, but it's even just making small changes and taking one or two of those components that I showed earlier. Like if you feel that you're not getting enough fruit in your diet, then maybe that's a goal that you'd like to set yourself for increasing that over a period of time. And once go, but don't be trying to do everything all at once. So hopefully in the future, maybe next year, we can think about producing some resources that will be helpful for older adults to make some changes to their diet towards the protein enriched Mediterranean diet, and have those recipes and everything available. So
Brilliant. Thanks so much. I'm just very conscious of the time. We only have 2 minutes late, so I might draw a halt to the questions here. But there are still loads of questions. There's been a huge interest. So it's great to see such an interest. I myself can say that I have definitely learned so much and have lots of questions as well. So that's just left for me then to finish up. I just wanted to let everyone know, and there were a few questions as well, that we are recording all these webinars. So they'll be available on the DRNI YouTube page. So this one will hopefully go up in the next couple of days. Next week, we will see webinar number 3, which is on brain stimulation in dementia. It'll be led by Dr. Michelle Kelly, NCI, and she'll be joined by Dr. Cassandra Dinius of Maynooth University. So that will take place Wednesday, the 29th of November at 11 a.m. So this time next week. Finally, huge thanks to Dr. Claire McEvoy for a great presentation. And really just, it was so interesting to hear it, not only just the fresh data, but just, the overall, with whether it's the supplements or the diet and, the combinations of like you say, how much do you actually eat of each? And of course, then, the cultural adaptation, which needs to be done. It's I found it hugely fascinating, and I've learned so much. And I think I speak for a lot of people who are here today, but having really enjoyed it. So thanks so much for taking your time out to be here. And sorry for all the technical hassle. And hopefully, maybe next week will be third time lucky that there'll be no Zoom issues and no internet connection issues. But I leave everybody with that positive thought, and to say thanks again, especially to you, Claire, and I wish everybody a enjoyable rest of the day. Thanks a lot.